Hello, hello. This works. So I can start now. For me, it's the first time I am in Greece, and if anyone's lost, we are actually in Athens, over there. That spike over there is Athens. And some of you might recognize where you're from or where your grandparents are from. And I believe that many people forget that data is alive and evolves. So what I'm going to show you today is give you some insights and ideas to be more creative and empower change in a good way. So what led to this talk? I think I had this question many times, and I was wondering, is it possible to present data in a way that really touches the audience, the reader, the viewer? And I believe the answer is yes. Let me begin with this incident, this catastrophe in the past. You might have heard of it, the Great Fire of London. But it happened really in the past. It's hard to remember. It's impossible to remember. It's hard to imagine the scale of this catastrophe because London has changed and maps have changed a lot. And any map is a reduction of realities, a simplification. That's where I decided and thought, how can we bring the past into the present with modern day technology? This led me to the creation with open source data. Oh, I forgot to mention, everything I'm using here is open source, so all of you can start using it today. This led to the creation of this 3D visualization of London, with modern day London in 3D, with the area affected by the fire on top. Of course, I added landmark, the pointer's not working. So landmark places like the Tower of London, the Tower Bridge, the London Bridge, and anyone who's been to London will recognize this. But not only is this dramatic and cool, it's in 3D. So in fact, there's an infinite number of pictures we can take of the same visual. I chose this angle, for example, to visualize. I like this angle because it's very dramatic and it puts the main landmarks in the front, the Tower of London and the Tower Bridge, and you see reflections on the tall skyscrapers. So this is the type of stuff I love doing. Now the boring stuff, some old labels that keep changing. I'm a freelancer now, but everything in data visualization, that it changes very quickly, as we will see later. I do data analysis and research, and also spatial data science, but the trick is to have good graphic design in the mix. My background is in economics, but I also switched to a master's in spatial data science. That's where all the maps come from. Now, a quick overview. I will talk about communication and languages and how visualization improves them. Then, quickly, I will go through creativity and data visualization to have an impact. Then I will quickly go through the workflow of one of my most creative charts, and I will finally end on a futuristic note, which is actually the present and not the future. Now, of course, I visualized my life as a chart because I like data visualization. But this chart is very personal, but it could have been also Greek, Chinese, or Arabic. The main point is that it started with two languages, French and Spanish and German. It then quickly evolved into French and English. But that's not the main point, that's personal. The main point is that in the middle it gets messy, and I quickly noticed that visual languages would allow me to speak to people beyond my mother tongues, and I wouldn't need to translate everything I thought. So visual languages give you superpowers, I would say. These cross-border languages I enjoyed was illustration, painting, then photography, then Photoshop, then R programming, or Python, then Blender 3D, and finally generative AI. So there are 2 points I want to make with this chart. First, that these languages for data journalists or journalists can expand beyond your mother tongue and borders. The second point of this is that all these outputs multiply each other. All the visuals. Now I can put an illustration from Photoshop into our programming language, and then combine that compound output into Blender, and then finally into generative AI, for example. So the compounding effect is massive, and I encourage you to play with your interests that you love in the visual way. Now, what is data visualization? Of course, you know it. It's a mix of data, art, and communication, the intersection. And you are all, so in data, there's the science, the analysis, the beauty. In art and communication, we have, that's all, you're excellent at it, and probably better than me, at communicating in a written way. So the intersections are, the true intersection we are interested here is data visualization, which is an image where the ingredient is data. But you are also familiar with the purple intersection, which is text and data. And then the other intersections are more abstract and are not for today. Now, I like when people remember things, and that's why I couldn't resist using generative AI to make this tasty donuts. So you might remember it. Now, let's talk about the ingredients of your research or article. If we have bad data, but excellent analysis and excellent communication, we still get wrong results. Again, we have perfect data, bad analysis, and excellent communication. We still get wrong results. And now the last bit. And this is very, very frustrating because you've done excellent analysis. You've found the best data ever. And then you have bad communication, and you get only weak or no results at all. So the best thing is, of course, the perfect combo. Oops. The perfect combo, excellent, 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 everything, which is a dream. Now, we want results and impact. So in data science, you might have heard that if you don't measure it, you cannot improve it. And that's correct. But I would add, and that's the role of journalists as well, if you don't show it, you cannot improve it. If you don't convince the audience, you cannot improve it. And so visualizing things or writing about things in an accessible way can really change the world. Let me give an example. This is one of my clients, which is an excellent client, brilliant think tank in the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, as you know, and as well as here, climate change is already an emergency. So they have these brilliant research and maps, and these are great for internal use, and they're perfectly clear and factual. These show infrastructure and flooding scenarios. But now they came to me because they want to reach policymakers, the wider public, and have an impact. That's where we can create, with high-resolution satellite data, again, open source, create visually appealing infrastructure showing the paths of maritime infrastructure and volumetric clouds, cinematic and realistic at the same time. And again, this is 3D, and we can just look at it and emphasize on the barriers, for example, that are saving one of the biggest ports in Europe from destruction. And so, once you have this, another different angle, this is good enough to change, to be public. This is good enough to be printed big, to shown on conferences, and to have an impact on this world. Now, of course, we have to say, is 3D necessary or equal to more impact? I have to say, it's often no. Often it takes more time, but not always. Then it can be terribly, terribly unnecessary. You've all seen horrible 3D things. If it doesn't add anything, don't use it. Thirdly, it can be counterproductive. Sometimes you can't even understand what's on the chart because it's 3D. So please, 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 don't use it wisely or for fun, or just call me. Fortunately for us, there are many, many pros, and I could talk for hours. But as you know, as journalists, we can make beautiful things memorable in this 6-second world, or brief world. You all know well the lifespan of journals and articles is really short sometimes, depressingly short. But if you make something creative and artsy, you might make something relevant forever. So evergreen visuals. You can awaken emotions, make it compelling, attractive, and accessible to more people, because we want impact and results. So the list goes on. So where are you now? And you might be wondering, how can you make all this? So you are on the left side of this. Everyone has data. Everyone does analysis in R, Excel, Python, Power BI, Tableau, whatever. And you have outputs, but then you stop, or you give it to your graphic designer. But what you can do is put it into Blender. Put it into Blender. Well, put it into Blender. And do the magic there. So let me show you one of the more creative examples. Believe it or not, this is a map of central Tokyo, where you can see in the egg is the cluster of restaurant density. I could spend hours on this, but I won't. The green dots are restaurants, and the egg is the delicious hotspots for the best ramens and the neighborhoods over there. So it's very detailed. So this is how I made it, with open source software, open data, and so everyone could do this. And actually tomorrow I will be showing a workshop, and anyone can try. I will give a 3-hour workshop on creating visuals such as these. Okay, that's not supposed to look like that. But anyway, if you fancy, tomorrow I will show you how to create this. Okay, I will continue. And the other great thing is that if you create it in 3D, you can also animate it. It's just one more step. And so this visual is still experimental. I will continue it after the event. But basically this shows data collected by IMED, by Thanasis. And I put it visually here to show 20 years of wildfires in Greece, which is scary. You see the source, always put the source of the data. So what's next? I've shown you all these visual things. Can we get more real? Can we animate more? And the answer is yes. Oh no, another food thing. So this, I won't tell you how I made this. This is a map of France, where the wine spilled on the cheese represents the wine regions, such as Champagne, Bourgogne, Bordeaux, and so on. So what's the point of this? So Actually, it reached photorealism in data visualization. What can we do more than that? Now with generative AI, we can just extend the table and add flowers. We can put it somewhere in southern France or in northern France, or we can start to wonder and experiment, who spilled that delicious wine? Was it this fat cat? Or was it this kitten? I think it was this one. But then, maybe it's just someone working from home, having a good life, drinking wine and eating cheese. So, a couple of clicks and you get these type of results after so much hard work. So generative AI is incredibly exciting, but scary at the same time. And you will hear it all over the place. Also for written, but also for images. And it is here to stay, and we will have to adapt. But us as data journalists, or what are we? We're back to our labels. Are we visual data journalists? Are we visual storytellers? Data artisans? Data creatives? These labels change so quickly, we have to adapt. Doesn't really matter. And how crazy is this? I would say very, very, extremely crazy. So I created this with open source everything. ChatGPT, Blender, a 3D scan of my head, Stable Diffusion, which is generative AI, and ControlNet. This was literally impossible a couple of months ago, and now I can do it by myself, and all of you have access to this type of technology. So is this a creative explosion? I would say yes. Everything goes exponential somehow, and we have to adapt very quickly or regulate it, but it's so fast, every week there's something new. So please, use it wisely and ethically. Now, what do I want to say now? I just want to say that we are in a golden age of creativity, and that it has never been easier to create visual things and explain visual stories and share it with anyone on the world, even if they don't speak your language. So, what are the key takeaways of my short talk? I have to breathe. So, firstly, we're in a golden age of visual data communication. But not only data, but I'm here for the data. It has never been easier to learn from humanity's knowledge. Open source, YouTube, everything, that's how I learned it. Thirdly, open source and open data are very powerful and are evolving extremely quickly. And people tend to remember only 3 things, but I will add a 4th one. Beautiful information is memorable and impactful. Thank you. So you can connect. I give tutorials, share things on Twitter, and if you have any questions, we don't have time for questions, but I will be around, I think. Unless we have question time. I don't know. We have 1 minute for questions. Any question? Please.
I would like to ask you, who are your clients, who you work for?
Who pays for this? That's the question. NGOs, think tanks, anyone who does research and wants to communicate with the world and put it visually in appealing ways. Then, I mean, for social media, I can create visuals. It's very varied. It's multidisciplinary, so anyone can. I will be working with some health data. I've been working with think tanks on climate change. The list goes on, but I am happy to collaborate with you. Thank you. More questions? So the workshop is tomorrow at 3, I think. 3 or 4, I should know that. Anyway, these outputs, for example, are all made with Blender and a mix of R. And I usually share them on Twitter and some behind the scenes. So feel free to connect and please start experimenting. Thank you.